Right, they're delighted to say welcoming today Benedict Spence, who's a Conservative commentator, who will be joining us overnight on election night. You're gearing up for that?
Yes, very exciting. I had nowhere else to be, let's be honest.
Wow. I mean, you've really sold that.
Don't worry, I'm going to be there with an accoutrement of sound effects, a kazoo, maybe some party poppers, exactly, for every Tory MP that goes, exactly. Don't worry, you won't want to miss it. It's going to be box office.
This is a taste of what you're going to get. That's why we've invited him. We thought we'd all need a little bit of a reality check on the night. Look, let's tell you what we're going to be talking about on the show, particularly in this hour. Boris Johnson, you may have seen last night and all over the front pages today, finally joined the Tory election campaign trail at the 11th hour. Came back from his holiday with his usual mussed-up hair. He warned disaffected Conservative voters of the perils of what he called a sledgehammer majority for Labour. He said it would deliver the most left-wing government since the war and was pregnant with horrors. Meanwhile, the former Home Secretary, potential Tory leadership contender Suella Braverman, has declared the election battle over and said the fight to save the Conservative Party from extinction must now begin. Meanwhile, 300 migrants detained ahead of deportation to Rwanda have been released as the Home Office civil servants stand ready to axe the scheme if Labour wins the election. They said they'd do that on day one. And more than 80% of staff who work from home have admitted in a survey to watching TV while on the job, chalking up an average of 2 hours a day. We don't mind if you're watching this show, obviously, but come on, this tells you everything you need to know. We'll be talking about that and plenty more besides. This is Talk. As I say, we are the home of common sense and the home of Benedict Spence, it would seem, over the next few days. What do you make of Boris's return? Because I'm going to play a really brief clip for people who haven't seen, not sitting on social media. He returned to the fold. It was a campaign event in Chelsea, which tells you everything about how much the Tories are trying to just shore up their core vote. The Prime Minister campaigning in seats, with 19,000 majority last time around. You would not normally bother with those seats if you thought you were going to do OK, or even just get to a hung parliament. But Boris Johnson was apparently persuaded to appear. He appeared and he got the usual celebrity welcome. Here is what Boris Johnson
They can achieve nothing at this election except to usher in the most left-wing Labour government since the war with a huge majority, and we must not let it happen. Don't let the Putinistas deliver the Corbynistas. Don't let Putin's pet parrots give this entire country psittacosis, which is a disease you get, by the way, from cozying up to pet parrots. If you actually want higher taxes next week, this year, if you feel you've got a few thousand to spare, then vote Labour on Thursday.
I have to say, that was a man, if you are watching on YouTube rather than just listening, I mean, that man has spent a lot of money on Sun in the last couple of weeks, is all I can say. Benedict Spence, what did you make of this?
What was the point? Honestly, at this stage in the day, and to have that little sort of, speech, it will have persuaded.
I mean, it was longer than the clip.
It was, but still, that was the highlight. Having to make a joke about a parrot disease and then explain the parrot disease, and talking about Putin and the Corbynistas, which is just not what anybody is actually voting on in this election. These are not relevant things, honestly. And to wheel him out, as you say, last minute in Chelsea, which, to be honest, is not even the sort of the safe seat that I think Boris Johnson would go down particularly well in, if we're being completely honest.
They're all Remainers, aren't they?
He is not popular in London anymore. I know he won the mayoral contest twice, but that is not, that is the past. There were other places he would have been better deployed. It just felt so unbelievably desperate to have him come out with these really quite tired lines that he's obviously not really put that much thought into.
Well, bearing in mind, of course, he's just returned from holiday, his second holiday. I mean, again, I'm not one to criticise people going on a holiday, as you well know. But even so, election campaign, he doesn't want to be associated with this. He considers Rishi Sunak the reason why he lost his premiership.
Yeah.
No, Boris Johnson, it was you that lost your premiership. But it's interesting that apparently he took the call from Sunak and he said he'd appear, and yet the two men did at no point appear together. Did not stand side by side, holding their hands aloft together. There was none of that. I think that is incredibly telling.
It is, and whether or not Boris sees perhaps a comeback possibility for himself in the future, and he's trying to have as much distance as possible whilst trying to also appear a team player, I don't know. But as I say, it felt really quite tired, and I know that he looked a bit more refreshed than he has done for a while, but it was a real sort of desperation. It's so much of the last couple of weeks has just been the whiff of desperation about, let's try Project Fear, let's try the guy who gave us the majority.
The tax thing. I mean, again, with Rishi Sunak, I mean, he's staying in the southeast today and tomorrow, looking at southeast seats where he had a 13,000 majority in 2019. I mean, again, you wouldn't normally bother with those seats. Warning about Labour tax rises, it's what they do, they're socialist. I mean, again, I wrote a piece for The Sun last weekend saying we don't know what Starmer we're going to get. You know, we'll only find out once he's in office. There is a very fair argument to make about what are we going to get. But it does appear, according to the polls, that the voters have gone, do you know what, we don't really care. We just don't want you lot anymore. There's an MRP poll out for Survation, another one of those mega polls. There are 2 or 3 more dropping this afternoon. But this latest one has Labour on, wait for it, guys, 484 seats. 484 seats. The Tories on just 64 seats, vying for second place, for being the official opposition, getting to ask those 6 questions at PMQs as opposed to just 2 like the SNP have had the last few years. With the Lib Democrats, I mean, we're all sitting there laughing at Ed Davey's, you know, latest stunts, and we're waiting to find out what Ed Davey's latest stunt is. The Lib Dem leader, of course, you know, paddleboarding, bungee jumping, going down a water slide. You know, God knows what they say. Fiery, I mean, lion taming. I don't know what
swords, that sort of
thing.
thing.
No idea what he's going to do today, but you know, he's got time. You know, people are looking at it on social media, and then he gets to talk about his, you know, this serious policies, and they do have some serious policies about things like social care, which are being really ignored by the other main parties. But when you've got the likes of Mel Stride, Work and Pensions Secretary, who's been wheeled out every other day, along with Grant Shapps, but particularly Mel Stride, in this campaign as a sort of a safe pair of hands, he, in the latest media round, has all but conceded defeat, talking about, you know, when Labour win and things. Suella Braverman, we'll get on to her, but an article she's written in The Telegraph saying basically the election is over and we failed. No right to berate reform over various things, and we'll come to that. But, I mean, when you've got that, there is just you know, that's it, they've lost. The question I'm going to ask everyone today, and I'd love to hear from you on this, is, as every poll predicts a Labour landslide, it's now just a matter of how big the majority is. What are your biggest hopes? What are your biggest fears for what a Labour government will do? We've heard a lot about fears from the Tories, we've heard a lot about hopes for the Labour, but what do you think? Given that that is what we're going to wake up to on a Friday morning, what are your biggest hopes and fears about what a Labour government will do? Is it about tax? Is it about immigration? Maybe it's hopes about dealing with the NHS, with schools? I'd love house building. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. You can text on 87222. You can get in touch on X at TalkTV. Calls charged at the national rate. Text costs £1 standard network rate message. I think ideally, answering that question, I'd love it if you didn't sort of think along party political lines, because there may be some things that you want done which actually the party you would normally support isn't offering to do, but you think actually that wouldn't be a bad idea. Or there are things that, you know, maybe you're a Labour supporter, but I really hope the Labour Party doesn't do this. Get in touch. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Benedict Spence, can you answer that? Let's talk about your biggest fears first and then your biggest hopes.
Oh, my biggest fear is that the Labour Party will fail to make the structural changes that are required and will realise very quickly how difficult the situation is, and so it will lean into culture war issues. It'll lean more heavily into class war things, into, for lack of a better word, wokery. It'll be all about sort of equality and race relations, and that'll be the
we're all in favour of equality. It's just what they mean by that.
Well, that's exactly the point, is that actually equality is very rarely equality. It's about shifting the sand so that some people are sort of preferred over others, and it's about appeasing certain demographics so that they vote for you. That is actually really what I do fear, and that does play into things like, for instance, recognising a Palestinian state ahead of time, you know, rewarding Hamas basically for attacking Israel by going, oh, OK, this is awful. Those are my biggest fears, is that ultimately when they realise how difficult the task ahead is, they go into what they think are the easy sort of gimmicky territory, which is what the Tories have done as well, by saying, we're going to stop the boats, and then not actually doing it. That sort of thing, And the free things, of course, is the other thing, that effectively they will try to basically bribe the electorate by giving certain key demographics things that they want, sort of at the expense of what is best. Those are my fears, but also broadly, the key thing there is not so much the leaning into the culture stuff, it's that they fail to address the structural problems that we face. That actually does lead, though, into what my hopes are, and there's two in particular that I'm very curious about, because one of the things that we have spoken a lot about is actually how reticent Labour are about talking specifically details about policies, because they are scared. Partly, I wonder if that's because they're scared of the backlash from their own voters if they make difficult decisions on things like, for instance, NHS reform. Wes Streeting has, in the past, spoken about how there is no money for the NHS. There will have to be reform. And that is one thing that I'm thinking a Labour government could get away with that far more easily than a Tory government could.
Well, indeed, you look at people talk about privatisation. I mean, of the NHS, that used to be the thing that Labour people said. But actually, it was interesting. The most privatisation of the NHS happened under Tony Blair.
There's one other thing that is sort of interesting me, because we've heard a lot about, you know, Great British Energy and how it's going to all be sort of renewables. One thing that I've heard from speaking to people with a little bit more knowledge of what's going on inside the Labour Party is their attitude towards nuclear is a little bit more, they're a little bit more bullish on nuclear power than perhaps they are prepared to say in public. That gives me a lot of confidence that they understand that one of the key drags on this country is growth, and one of the things, apart from house building, which I don't have much faith in, is energy production. We have the highest bills in Europe for energy in almost any sector. If you're able to invest long term in that, and that's, you know, a cross section of things, some renewables, nuclear, you know, oil and gas. If you're able to do that, if you're able to do that, well, of course they have to sell that though, don't they? We all know that that's what's going to happen. They'll have to give people a few more wind farms in return for the nuclear stations we need. But if they're able to get a grip on that, that is a very positive thing. And if they're not saying a lot now about it because they fear that, you know, the loonies will go to the Greens and say no new nuclear here, that does fill me with some confidence that maybe they understand it.
Where, again, we've told, you know, oh, don't give them a supermajority. That has no meaning. It's not, you know,
it's not a thing.
It's just not a thing in our democracy. And again, I don't understand why you can do more with a majority of 200 than you can with a majority of 80. But it is interesting some of the concerns people have raised within the Labour Party. We've had some guests on saying, you know, actually you get very unwieldy set of backbenchers. You can have a cabinet minister who disagrees with something can have not just sort of, you know, a handful of backbenchers who agree with him or her. They can have 80 and who can cause difficulties. And you also get a lot of people who go, well, I'm not going to get promoted. I'm not going to go on the front bench. I'm never going to be a PPS. I'm going to be a spokesperson. I'm never going to, you know, give bag carrier and then work my way up. I've been ignored for the last 2 years. I ain't going up the ranks. Well, I may as well make my life a bit more fun and be difficult.
Yeah. I think this is going to be the real question about how much Sir Keir Starmer can get done. Because actually, not only is it to do with that, to do with ambition, it's to do with the size of the majorities that a lot of his MPs are going to get. I think there are going to be an awful lot of marginals, you know, a matter of a few thousand in it. And then you're going to have the same problem that the Tories had when it came, for instance, to planning reform, which is the other major drag, which is that lots of MPs realise, oh, I quite like being an MP. I don't want to lose my job in 5 years' time, so I'm going to stop any changes to planning because that's the #1 route to being voted out.
They thought, and also the people who are concerned about new house building are always people who vote. But the Labour Party was promising to, I mean, yes, you know, basically override local people's concerns. They said they're going to change the laws and that. And I think there is an argument for that. But again, that's what the Tories said they'd do. But the thing is, they were doing it basically in areas which were Tory voters and the Tory MPs. And Tory MPs objected. And even though for the good of, I think, the community and the nation, actually, they shouldn't have. However, Labour don't mind that because it's a load of, you're upsetting a load of Tories who aren't going to vote for you anyway. Well, now, if those are Labour seats, then they don't want to upset them. It's going to be absolutely fascinating, isn't it? But this MR people, I mean, a majority, I mean, 484 seats for Labour is a huge, huge, huge majority. Suella Braverman has basically hit back at the government. You know, she, of course, was, you know, sacked by Rishi Sunak. And she has basically said, it's over. Gone further than, you know, Mel Stride. We have failed. And in particular, she said, these attacks on Farage, we heard this from Boris Johnson, Kremlin crawler, Putin. He says, look, I've been critical of what Nigel Farage had to say about Ukraine and the faults of the EU and NATO. But there's I'm sorry, it is absurd to claim that Nigel Farage is a big fan of Vladimir Putin. He's very, very clear. Everyone says he's an admirer. No, he said what anyone who is sane, who has been watching what he's doing, anything in the last 20 years, would say, which is that he is a fantastic political operator. He has outmanoeuvred on a grand scale many political leaders who think they're much cleverer than him. He's a very wily, he's a murderous, evil, horrible man, but he's a very wily operator. Now, you know, this idea that Boris Johnson called him out, but the other things, there's been all this criticism. Reform UK, they've lost, I think, 3 candidates now who defected to the Tories. There's a lot of claims from the Reform UK of dirty tricks and people, you know, last-minute candidates being appointed, and then, you know, like there was a candidate, won't name them, you resigned yesterday, still on the ballot paper though, but saying, oh, you know, I've got massive concerns. All the candidates are racist and bigoted, but apparently this candidate had never at any point raised any concerns with the leadership. So that's a bit bizarre. But Suella Braverman points out that they have no right in the Tories to berate Reform over racism after they took 15 million quid from donor Frank Hester. After, look, he hasn't denied saying absolutely foul things about Diane Abbott. You could hate Diane Abbott, or just, no, I don't hate her. You could dislike Diane Abbott because she's a race grifter. She plays the race card all the time. She said outrageously anti-white racist things. I think she's incompetent. I think she's well past her sell-by date as a politician. And yes, she was a trailblazer many years ago, but she ain't anymore. She supported Jeremy Corbyn and, you know, anti-Semitic candidates. I've got not a nanosecond of concern for her wanting, you know, wanting that woman to be a part of our politics. Nothing to do with her, but happy voting her seat, but just literally in terms of people who have those views. But at the end of the day, you know, Frank Hester said he seeing her makes him want to go out and shoot a black woman. I mean, I'm sorry to shoot her. His comments were outrageous. He should have been brave. His money should have been handed back. What does Rishi Sunak do? He took another 5 million from him. Yeah.
Why is Suella Braverman raising this now, with a matter of hours before the actual election starts? Why is she saying now, with a matter of hours before the election actually gets underway, you know, that it's over? Thanks, Nostradamus. You know, that this is not actually news. This is not insightful.
Suella Braverman.
I'm not impressed by Suella Braverman. Suella Braverman wants to be leader of the Conservative Party. I think she's beginning to understand that she won't be, because she's not very good. I think she understands that there are better candidates than her on the right of the party who are more likely to keep their seats. I think that all of this sort of unite the right thing is an attempt, it's a final appeal to say to people, look, I am the unity candidate, I can bring Reform back on side. But it's also possibly softening the grounds for her to maybe, I don't know, defect and join Reform at some point, because I think she's keeping her options open. And she would be a big beast in that party, whereas she's probably not going to be a significant figure in the future Conservative Party.
That's very interesting.